Let me show you something shocking. You know that on Monday, Donald Trump revealed that he has negotiated a very detailed bilateral trade agreement with Mexico. Bilateral just means two sides. The U.S. and Mexico, as in Canada's not part of it. Well, Trump wanted to talk to Justin Trudeau about that. I don't know what he wanted to say. To invite Canada in to tell Trudeau the details, just to take a reading of Trudeau's own views on things. I don't know, whatever. I mean, it's a successor trade deal to NAFTA, the huge treaty that Canada, Mexico, and the United States are in right now. It was at the very least a courtesy call to Trudeau. But a leader-to-leader call like that, who knows what would have been said? What leader in the entire world would not take a phone call from Donald Trump, even if that leader hated him? In fact, especially if that leader hated him. Wouldn't you want to hear what he wanted to tell you? I mean, China's President Xi, Russia's Vladimir Putin, North Korea's Kim. Even if you have a disagreement with Trump, actually, especially if you have a disagreement with Trump, wouldn't you want to hear what Donald Trump thought was so important for you to hear that he wants you to hear it from himself? I can't imagine turning down such a phone call. I can't imagine anything being more important or urgent, especially if, like Canada, we are dependent on the United States for trade. We are so intertwined with America in every way. Well, Justin Trudeau refused to take the phone call. He refused. Trump called, Trudeau wouldn't come to the phone. I'm not kidding. Of course, I only learned about this from the foreign press. Our own state broadcaster, the CBC, would never report something so embarrassing, so revealing about our dear leader. This is from Bloomberg's White House reporter. Look at this tweet. Trump had wanted to speak to Trudeau this a.m. before the Mexico trade deal announcement at 11 a.m., but Canada said Trudeau had a schedule conflict at the requested hour, sources told me and Josh Wingrove. A scheduling conflict? But that's not true. Every day Justin Trudeau publishes his schedule. This is his entire official schedule from Monday. It's just, private time. He's got some meetings, maybe, or maybe that's just code for him taking another day off work. He's had more than 20 vacation days so far in 2018. Now, he calls those personal days, on top of regular weekends and statutory holidays. But it's not like he was at an incredibly important function. He had no public functions. He was not at some critically important summit meeting. He was not even in the House of Commons. He wasn't traveling. And even if he was doing any of those things, could he not really step out of another engagement for 10 minutes? Just pretend he had to go to the bathroom or something. I don't know. Sir, I know we're having an important conversation, Youth Council of Papineau. I know we're having an important conversation, dairy farmer of Quebec. I just got the President of the United States on the other line. How about you take a coffee break and I'll be back in 10? Who on earth would say no to that? Who on earth would be more important? And even if they were more important, who on earth wouldn't understand the need for Justin Trudeau to talk to Donald Trump for 10 minutes in the middle of an NAFTA negotiation? It is obviously not a real excuse. Even if he were on a plane, which he wasn't, the Prime Minister's plane can take phone calls. It is a lie that could not possibly be true. The truth is that Trudeau was snubbing Donald Trump. Well, Trump returned the favor pretty hard, I'd say. This is what Donald Trump said at his announcement from the Oval Office on Monday with the Mexican president on the speakerphone.
Canada will start negotiations shortly. I'll be calling the Prime Minister very soon, and we'll start negotiation. And if they'd like to negotiate fairly, we'll do that. They have tariffs of almost 300% on some of our dairy products, so we can't have that. We're not going to stand for that. I think with Canada, frankly, the easiest thing we can do is to tariff their cars coming in. It's a tremendous amount of money, and it's a very simple negotiation. It could end in one day, and we take in a lot of money the following day. But I think we'll give them a chance to probably have a separate deal. We could have a separate deal, or we could put it into this deal.
That's stunning, but it's not surprising. It's stunning because our best friend, the United States, is no longer our best friend, but not surprising, though, because for nearly 2 years, Justin Trudeau's Liberals, with the full support of our state broadcaster, the CBC, have done their best to pick fights with Donald Trump. It's nuts. Trump never really paid attention to Canada before, which was good. He just took us for granted, which is good. Like we take America for granted, I guess. Trump always instead focused his ire on China and Mexico when it came to trade irritants, because we Canadians more or less have balanced trade with America. That means we buy as much from them as they buy from us. So Trump never really cared about us until Trudeau just started irritating Trump again and again so gratuitously. Sometimes it was just personal attacks. Remember this one right before Trump was elected?
I think, however, I've been very, very clear in my approach as a feminist, as someone who has stood clearly and strongly all my life around issues of sexual harassment, standing against violence against women, that I don't need to make any further comment at this time.
That was Justin Trudeau more or less accusing Donald Trump of physical violence against women. A bit ironic now that we know that Justin Trudeau himself groped women. But that's politically insane. That's pretty much how every Liberal in Trudeau's office thinks and talks, though. And they haven't really muted it at all over the past 2 years. Most of the time, Trump just didn't pay attention, or if he did, he didn't show it. It's like a little mouse nibbling at an elephant's toes. Trump did raise some objections about our 300% dairy import tariffs, but that's not huge in the whole scheme of things. He raised objections to cheap subsidized Chinese steel being dumped into the U.S. by coming through Canada. But again, that's not even our problem, really. It's just a small thing. We just have to cut out the Chinese, which is Trump's real rivals. But Trudeau was so irritating so often, and Freeland, our foreign minister, was so irritating so often, it had to be on purpose. Like that speech that Freeland gave earlier this year in Washington at the Foreign Policy magazine in a real in-your-face way when she won a Diplomat of the Year award.
When people feel their economic future is in jeopardy, when they believe their children have fewer opportunities than they themselves had in their youth, that's when people are vulnerable to the demagogue who scapegoats the outsider, the other, whether it's immigrants at home or trading partners abroad.
So you're in a trade negotiation with Donald Trump and you fly down to his capital city. You meet with a room of chattering class Washington insiders, lobbyists, pundits to bash Trump. Not very veiled bashing of Trump. Was it really worth it, though? Being called Diplomat of the Year. It's sort of like those world's best dad mugs. You know, you can buy it at any souvenir store. World's best dad. I mean, it's not a real contest, right? It's a joke, right? I mean, if you're the world's best diplomat, first of all, you probably aren't known because the best diplomats achieve their goals for their country, not for their own celebrity. You know who might actually be the world's best diplomat now that I think about it? This terror. Sergei Lavrov. You know that guy? That's Vladimir Putin's foreign minister. Putin invaded Georgia, and there were no real penalties against him from George W. Bush. So Putin invaded Crimea and annexed it with no real penalties from Barack Obama. Putin shot down a jetliner over Ukraine. Remember that? No real penalties. Putin managed to get Angela Merkel to agree to buy a third of Germany's energy from Russia. Putin managed to essentially take over Syria from Barack Obama. Sergei Lavrov did those things. He doesn't care about giving preening speeches. He gets things done for Putin. Awful things sometimes. Can you name anything Chrystia Freeland has got done for her client, that is us? In fact, other than Iran or Cuba, is there a single country in the world that you can name that is more sympathetic or more supportive or more allied with Canada today than when Trudeau and Freeland took over? I mean, just think of the big ones: Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, Israel, the United States. Can you name a single country that we have stronger ties with now than before Trudeau and Freeland took over? Diplomat of the Year, what a joke. Well, our Diplomat of the Year was in Germany on Monday, giving the same anti-American speech. Isn't that funny? While Mexico and the United States were celebrating their new agreement. You know, as I mentioned the other day, the Mexican foreign minister has visited the White House 45 times and visited the house of Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law, 10 more times. That's 55 visits. No wonder he got a great deal. In fact, I'm not sure how Mexico's foreign minister could really have been doing anything else with his time if he literally had 55 meetings in Washington. I bet he's got to have an apartment in Washington. He's probably, maybe he even lives there. Obviously, this was the most important thing in his life and for his country's prosperity, and he acted like it, don't you think? I haven't heard of him giving any speeches bashing America or getting a Best Diplomat mug. He got a deal instead, and I think it's a good deal for Trump. If I read it right, it keeps out cheap Chinese parts from Mexican-made cars being sold into America. It requires higher labor costs at Mexican car factories so that they don't deeply undercut American factories. That helps Mexican workers, but it obviously helps American factories be more competitive. These are interesting deals and complicated deals and detailed deals. And there are other parts of this deal too, including on intellectual property. And it goes much beyond cars. And Trump said he's getting along so well with his Mexican counterparts now. They're talking about continuing their talks on other sensitive issues like border security. And if you've met someone 55 times, you probably get along with them pretty well by now. I mean, how many times have you met any friends in your life? That's, you know, both sides are obviously getting something positive out of it. You know that it was a success for Mexico when that crazy Trump hater, I don't know if you know this guy, he's the former Mexican president, Vicente Fox. He is a kook on Twitter, and here's one of his tweets. This is translated by Twitter automatically into English. He was tweeting about how important a deal this was for Mexico. Today there is much to celebrate. Great triumph for Mexico, for President Peña and his great negotiating team. Bravo, great win. You know, we all win. Trade is always a win. So this guy hates Trump. He has in the past condemned this same Mexican government for dealing with Trump. But then Mexico pulled a rabbit out of a hat. For both sides, I guess, Trump has done enough deals in his life to know the best ones are ones where both sides can say they won something. So Chrystia Freeland saw this and she hopped on a plane and flew from Germany, where she was giving her Trump bashing speech. She flew to Washington, and listen what she had to say when she landed there yesterday.
Really paved the way for what Canada believes will be a good week is the fact that Mexico has made some significant concessions, particularly in the area of labor and of rules of origin on cars. For our government, good jobs for working people in Canada has always been our priority. And these concessions really are going to be valuable for workers in Canada and in the United States who have been concerned for some time about their jobs going to lower wage jurisdictions.
So she's really trash-talking the deal that Mexico got, implying that they really got taken advantage of by the Americans. Boy, they were so dumb to do a bilateral deal instead of having Chrystia Freeland there to help them with the hard parts. I think that's what she was saying there. Well, here's the Mexican ambassador to Canada on TV the other day. He sounds pretty happy, sounds pretty confident. He's not spiking the football or anything, I don't think so. He's just saying, yeah, his country got a deal. Take a look.
Actually, the Canadian government, the Prime Minister just a few minutes ago has said, and yesterday Global Affairs, that they welcome the progress made. We hope that these breakthroughs that Mexico made with the U.S. will be positive and will be good for Canada.
So today, this morning, Chrystia Freeland was finally invited for a meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative. Now, that's a special office with the top negotiator in America. Robert Lighthizer is his name. He's not elected like Chrystia Freeland. He's appointed. All he does is do deals. He's a pro. He's not an ex-journalist like Chrystia Freeland. So Freeland finally gets a meeting at his office. And you know who else is coming? Jared Kushner, the consummate Trump fixer is there too. And as you know, he's also Trump's son-in-law. In some ways, he's been Trump's secret weapon. He's like, they call him the Trump whisperer. He's the guy who gets tough deals because he's family. He can speak candidly to the president in ways that no one else can, because you can't really fire family. And here's how that went. Let me quote. Jared Kushner just walked in for the meeting with Canada. The Canadian Minister of Foreign Affairs is not here. She is late. Late. But we know she was in town. She flew in yesterday. She was late. How? Did she get lost? We saw the clip of her standing in front of that same office on Tuesday, so she knows where it is. Did she just hit the snooze button on her alarm too many times, and maybe her staff forgot to phone her at the hotel? Did she have a more important meeting, like Justin Trudeau claimed to? Was this not the most important meeting in her entire public life? And also for the lives of, 160,000 people who work in Ontario's auto industry, who will get smacked by Trump if we get a trade war. Late for a meeting with Jared Kushner and the trade rep. That's a psychological tactic. That's a dominance play. I'm making you wait. I'm more important than you, so you can wait for me when I'm good and ready. It's the same bizarre move that Canada played last year. Remember this trade deal in Vietnam when all of our other allies were there? Remember Australia? And you see that empty chair there with the Canadian flag in front of it on the left, bottom left of the screen there. Canada just didn't show up. We didn't just spite America. We spited all those countries. You see the Japanese flag there? No notice, no warning, no courtesy, no diplomacy, no explanation. We just didn't show up. By we, I mean Trudeau and his cabinet. You can do that kind of power move, I guess, if you're Donald Trump himself, but not even too often, because then people think you're just unreliable. Your word doesn't mean anything. You're not a promise keeper. Whether people love you or fear you, they have to know you mean what you say. And not showing up at a scheduled meeting, that's actually not a sign of toughness. It's a sign of unreliability, of unseriousness, of capriciousness. And that doesn't work if you are Chrystia Freeland, who is already known for all of those flaws, and whose boss, Justin Trudeau, just refused to take a phone call from Trump on Monday. In the past, when negotiating with teeny tiny Belgium, the country that's famous for making chocolate, Chrystia Freeland thought crying would get her a trade deal. Remember that?
Le Canada travaillait vraiment. Et moi, personnellement, j'ai travaillé très fort. Mais il semble évident pour moi, pour le Canada, que l'Union européenne n'est pas capable maintenant d'avoir un accord international, même avec un pays qui a des valeurs si européennes comme le Canada.
In other negotiations, Freeland didn't go for the tears. She thought sending cute little email emojis, you know what I'm talking about, those little smiley faces, that would do the job. Remember that?
The European Trade Commissioner, Cecilia Malmström, and I call each other sisters in trade. We sign our emails hugs. We
really?
Sometimes
You actually do that?
Yes, we do.
Wow.
We sometimes send each other smiley faces in particularly difficult moments.
Yeah, that didn't even work with the chocolate-making superpowers. I don't think that's working with Donald Trump. That looks weak and pitiful, but even that was better than the pure disrespect of not taking phone calls and not showing up for a meeting. Hey, let me ask you something. Do you think Donald Trump actually means it when he says he wants to put tariffs on our auto industry? I think he means it. Manny Montenegrino convinced me of this this week. Trump has already put tariffs on Canada for certain things. He's in a huge trade war with China. That's why he smacked our steel for the Chinese steel that's being put through Canada. Trump just, I think it was today, his last quarter's GDP growth was revised upwards to 4.2% on a quarterly basis. His economy is so strong right now. Remember, they're 10 times larger than us. he won't even notice a bump in the road if Canada retaliates. I think Trump actually wants a war. Manny convinced me of this, so that Trump can bring our Canadian auto industry back down to the United States. And once you move those factories there, they ain't ever coming back. I actually think Trump wants a trade war to relocate those factories. The crazy thing is Trudeau is behaving like he wants a trade war too. Justin Trudeau already killed off Canada's oil and gas and pipeline industry with the help of Rachel Notley. $100 billion gone. Now he's gunning for Ontario's auto industry. Trudeau! I think his strategy is exactly what Stephen Harper warned us about. Trudeau wants to run against Trump in the 2019 Canadian election. If that really was your strategy, you would refuse phone calls. You would show up late for meetings. You would give insulting speeches too, wouldn't you, if you were trying to scupper the deal? I'm sorry, my friends, unless something changes in the next 48 hours, which is what Trump says the deadline is, I think we are heading into a deep recession in this country, courtesy of our diplomat of the year and her man-child of a boss. That's an excerpt from my daily TV show, The Ezra Levant Show. Normally it's behind a paywall, but I thought you'd like this video, so we put it on YouTube. If you want to subscribe to watch the daily show every day, including always 2 interviews a day, and I read my hate mail, just click on this screen and become a premium member.